Hello and welcome to my channel, From Profession to Passion, with me, Vicky Mittman. The purpose of this channel is to inform and inspire professionals to live their careers on their terms. Whilst the traditional route in many professions may work well for some, it isn't for everyone, and there are different ways of doing things. On this channel, I'll be sharing my own story of how I combined my profession in law with my passion for coaching and mentoring, and I'll be interviewing other professionals who've developed their own side hustles, changed career directions altogether, or found some other way to involve their passions in their professional lives. I am delighted today to be joined by Naomi Holbrook. Naomi and I know each other through the coaching space. She is the midlife transformation mentor and also a certified nutrition and weight management coach. But that's not where it all started for Naomi. And as ever, we're interested in the journey that got us to where we are now. So Naomi, are you happy to share a bit of your journey so far?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on, Vicky. It's lovely to be here. This is all about profession to passion. So I guess, starting at the beginning, I wasn't academic at all at school. I struggled a lot in schooling with a lot of time off for sickness and ill health. And then when I was 12, my mum became chronically ill, and we had sort of a lot of years then of a lot of disruption in the family, a lot of trauma that was going on. And I found that massively impactful on my school and my learning and my ability at school. So I guess I left feeling like a bit of a dropout, no GCSEs, no qualifications, I guess in a way, no kind of no feeling of the future being particularly rosy. And I got into college and studied beauty therapy and hairdressing. Beauty therapy was something that kind of always appealed to me a little bit, but if I'm honest, I probably wanted to take after my mum and in her footsteps as being a nurse, but I didn't have the academic sort of background to be able to do that. So I qualified as a beauty therapist and hairdresser at 19. And then 20, I went out into the big wide world and I started my career with Champneys. Well, it is Champneys now, but back then it was Henlow Grange. And I started there as a therapist at 20. And I didn't really see it as being the start of my career. I just saw it as my first job, but a pretty spectacular first job for a girl who'd grown up in a little village in Devon and, the big wide world and this huge kind of health farm and all these opportunities. And then that just led to the next thing. And I know you and I had a chat last week and I said, I never had a map. I never had a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a goal. I just really went from one role to the next role, whether it was a promotion, whether it was, sort of creating the next role for myself. And I spent 21 years of my career really doing that, just kind of evolving and going to the next role when it came up, but with no big goal of, this is where I want to be in 5 years. This is where I see myself going.
Yeah, and it sounds like some of that was a very natural, organic progression within the industry you were in. But were there other more significant changes that you made whilst you were in that 21-year period?
Yeah, definitely. There were some really significant ones. And probably the biggest one, 2004, I was actually working in luxury hospitality. I was a manager in the spa at the Mandarin Oriental, which,
Wow.
one of the most prestigious hotel brands in the world. And I was working there and I loved it, absolutely loved it. But I'd been there 3 years. Grueling shifts, as anybody in luxury hospitality knows. And I was commuting from outside of London and at three years in, I was kind of like, I'm not sure I can do this for much longer. And an opportunity arose through, we were just saying a minute ago about women connecting women. And actually it was somebody who I'd worked with previously, who knew somebody else who was actually just about to start opening cosmetic stores for a US brand. And they contacted me and said, would you be interested? And I had no experience at all of opening a standalone business, of, all the operational side. But I don't know, something inside of me just said, this sounds too good to be true, and I've got to go for it. And so I guess my diversion then went from sort of luxury hospitality into wellness and into the cosmetic and into more sort of a sales role. So that was a pretty big leap. That was in 2004.
Yeah, and it sounds like it was a shift as well between the sort of the more service element and the product and sales element as well.
Yes. Yeah, very, very much so, because everything, like you said, that I'd sort of done in the luxury hospitality was more about the service that I provided, and then it was actually to a more product-based role. But I think that maybe an element of the fact that I came from such a service-based background probably helped a lot with a standalone business, because it was creating that kind of environment that, you know, welcomed people to come back again.
Yes, and probably as well, your training at organisations like Champneys and the Mandarin Oriental must have been fantastic in standing you in good stead for that.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, because we obviously have a mutual connection, and that was my wonderful first boss and I guess mentor, even though I never realized it at the age of 21. Dorothy Purdue, who was my first boss, my first experience of a female, in that kind of business role model. And I probably didn't thank her very much at the time, because she was firm and she was strong and she had incredibly high standards. But I truly, truly believe that it was an incredible kind of foundation to my career. And it probably had not probably, I know it did, had a massive impact on not just my standards and everything else, but I think also just even having a name like that on my CV from straight out of college and going to work somewhere like that. I'm absolutely sure that it opened quite a lot of the doors for me afterwards.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. But also, I think Dorothy's one of those people, and I knew her personally rather than professionally, but such a visionary. And you always knew what she was thinking because she told you. And actually, that sort of frankness and transparency can be alarming in some ways, but it's so rewarding in others, because you never know. You never think, oh, I might be doing something wrong and don't know about it. So yeah, she's such a tremendous woman.
Yeah, absolutely. Inspirational.
Inspirational indeed. And what led to your most recent shift? Your shift, was it about 7 years ago that you started doing what you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, some people might have said it was a midlife crisis. In fact, they did. At 38, I started to feel some unease, I guess, sort of in my career, of just feeling like I didn't feel so aligned anymore. I felt that maybe my values were changing. Maybe I felt a little bit unsettled. And that was in my late sort of 30s, at 38, just feeling like I just couldn't see myself doing what I was doing until retirement. And I kept sort of asking myself those questions. Gosh, can you do this for another 20, another 25 years? And it wasn't that moment of, oh my gosh, I'm quitting, but I guess it kind of happened over about a 3-year period. And I kept feeling unsettled in jobs, in companies, and maybe then looking what was out there, or being headhunted and going for that opportunity. And then all of a sudden at 41, I literally just went, this is it. I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't feel aligned to it. So I did do the unimaginable. I did do the unthinkable. I walked out of my 21-year career at 41. I had no plan B, and I didn't even have an idea of what I was going to do. I had 2 mortgages on my own. I didn't have a partner, but I don't know. I look back now and I think there was just a gut instinct of, you've got to take this leap. You've got to do this. And I left. And I took a little bit of time to kind of think about what I wanted to do. And something that I had done myself at 39 was started to transform my own life through my own health and well-being, after, at 39 being told by the doctor that I was clinically obese, pre-diabetic. I battled chronic pain for sort of 20, 25 years. And at 39, I had a bit of a wake-up call and thought, I need to do something. I don't want to get to 40 and feel like this. So I'd already started my own journey, my own health transformation, my own sort of well-being journey. And then when I walked out of my career, I just felt this absolute calling, like, this is all happening for a reason. This is, your opportunity to, you know, serve, to help others, to help other people do what you've done. And so, yes, I completely requalified. I became a certified nutrition and weight management coach. And over the 6 years, that has evolved. You know, I started off by coaching women for weight loss, and actually now a woman of 48 who's in her menopause journey, I now really help women to revolutionize their happiness, their health, and their hormones in midlife, to just help them to transition through this season that can be hugely challenging, but it also can, if you do it in the right way with the right strategies and everything else, it can also be hugely empowering.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And I know we've spoken about your programs and your business before, and it feels like such a holistic approach, when a lot of people are often just looking at weight loss, or just looking at changing styles, or just, you know, looking at one element of it, but actually putting it all together and helping with a much bigger picture has got to be so valuable. And something that you said about your gut instinct, just knowing it was the time to take the leap, I think that's really important, because a lot of people come to me, not just women, men as well, but in that career transition stage, then when they think, I've been doing this for so long and I'm qualified and I'm credible, but I just don't want to do it forever. And do I want another 15, 20 years doing this? And like you say, sometimes the values and you know, everything's out of alignment. Your values don't fit with what you're doing, whereas they might have done 15 years previously. So, you know, I suppose, leading on from that, what do you think are some of the threads that have been there throughout your journey so far, things that you've always clung on to, and, you know, the parts that have been really consistent that you can definitely hang your hat on even still?
I think one thing that has sort of been a really key thing for me is our idea of success, our belief of success. I think, you know, I grew up thinking that you had to have one career, you stayed in that job, you know, you got a good pension. That was kind of, you know, it was what was drummed into you at an early age, you know, get your foot on the property ladder, get into a job that, you know, is kind of guaranteed and successful and all those different things. And I think one thing that the pandemic did for a lot of people was actually made them realize that there is no such thing as job security. There is no such thing as, you know, a job that is secure or safe or anything else. So I think I probably had to disrupt a lot of my previous thought process, and change my own kind of view of success. And yet everything has remained the same, in so much as, you know, something that's always been important to me is that integrity, is that honesty, is, you know, the outcome of the customer, the client, the consumer, whatever it might be, the service that they get. And I think that there are lots of common threads throughout there. So it's not like I just sort of walked out of my career and closed the door, although there was a little element of me that did. Kind of just like that. There was a little bit of a rebellion, actually, when I left the corporate world of, you know, I don't want to be on LinkedIn anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And I think that was probably a little bit of, I needed to get that out of my system. But I think there's lots of common threads.
Yeah, and I think that drawing a line under it when you're making a transition is actually part of the process, and probably quite an important part, even if you decide to go back onto LinkedIn, or to do something different when you're ready, and when you're in your new role, whatever that is, and whether you've created it for yourself, or moved and transitioned in your career. So tell me, Naomi, if you were talking to your 21-year-old self now, or to somebody else who was just stuck in their career, in the earlier stages of the career, what advice would you give?
Oh my word, what a question. I think I'd have to write a book, funnily enough.
Well, you should get right on that.
Yes, I know.
For the viewers out there, Naomi is actually writing a book at the moment.
But you're so right. It's that hindsight, isn't it, of what would I do? And I think the first thing I would say is that gut instinct. Listen to your gut, because we're not really taught to listen to our gut and our heart. We're taught a lot to listen to our head. Everything has to be logical. It has to make sense. It has to, you know, kind of the dots and the I's and the crosses and all those things. But I think truly you've got to be happy in what you do. And I know that that might sound a little bit woo-woo and a bit like, well, I've still got to pay the bills, but you've got to feel aligned to what you do. And if you don't, then it has a massive impact on your emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being, everything else. So I think the first thing I would say is listen to your gut. If you're having those kind of questions in yourself of, could I do this for another 20 years? Then the likelihood is you probably already know the answer. And I know for me, when I, resigning from my 21-year career was probably the biggest thing I've ever done. And I felt literally sick before. And yet the day I handed my notice in and the day I walked out of those doors, I felt nothing but relief. Yeah. So I think you always know when you've taken a gut instinct and done something and had that outcome. I think the other thing I would say, and funnily enough, this is one of the parts of, or just one of the things that I talk about, that I'll be talking about in my book, is you're never going to feel ready. And I think, again, we have this feeling, or we have this logic of, I need to wait until I've got all my ducks in a row. I need to wait until, I've got that next promotion, or I need to wait till I've had the salary increase, or whatever it might be. But the honest truth is, those are just all stories we tell ourselves to keep ourselves in the place that we are. It's, just our brain trying to keep us safe, stopping us from stepping out of our comfort zone. And we'll never, ever feel ready. I certainly didn't feel ready at 41 to walk out of a 21-year career and leave it behind me. But when you take the action, when you do it, you don't have to see the whole path in front of you. You can just take that first step and the next step and the next step. And before you know it, you're maybe in a different place to where you expected to be, but actually maybe that place is even better.
Yeah, so true. And that really resonates with me in my own journey, because I also had that moment of when I was going to hand in my notice, and I'd been having conversations with my firm about the direction we were going with that particular part of the business I did. And I was less satisfied, and I think they knew I wasn't happy. And in the end, it probably worked out well for both parties that I did hand in my notice. But there was this point when I thought, I'm just not quite sure how the next stage is going to go, because I wasn't leaving to go to another employed job with all of the usual protections that comes with that. And that's all I'd known since I'd qualified, since I'd been a trainee solicitor. And, doing that, actually handing in the notice, the build up to it was far worse than actually doing it, because it felt like a weight had been lifted. It really did. There was, of course, nervousness. And the next day I thought, right, what am I doing next? And then I gave myself a few days off, because it was actually luckily a long weekend. But I remember thinking, gosh, I've got to actually make a plan for the next stage. But no matter how many plans I've made, what's been most interesting about the last 5.5 years for me is that actually whatever has worked or not worked, I've taken the learnings from it and then moved with that, rather than having it so clear cut, which had definitely been a part of my previous professional life. And I hear that a lot.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to let go of that expectation of what it's meant to look like. And here's the kind of naivety a little bit from me. I had 21 years in the corporate sort of industry. And I just thought that I would start my business up and people would come flooding to me. I'd, put up a new post on LinkedIn and everyone would come flooding. And that was very naive, and probably a lot of ego involved there of, I'm just going to start up and my business is just going to, start rocketing straight away. I have learned more in the last 7 years as an entrepreneur than I did in 21 years of my career. Because, you have every single hat, in corporate, you have somebody to fix your printer when it goes, and you have somebody to sort the marketing plan out. You are doing every single element when it's your own business and you're growing and evolving that business. But I wouldn't even swap the low moments, because I think they're all what develops us and creates and gives us that kind of that sense of accomplishment as well.
Oh, well, amazing, Naomi. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. That's really wonderful. And if people want to connect with you or find out more about what you do, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, of course, it's social media. It has to be in this day and age. I'm on Facebook, which is just Naomi Holbrook. I'm on LinkedIn, which is also Naomi Holbrook, and I'm also on Instagram. So I'll give you the links, and I guess you can
I'll drop them
in drop them in there. But yes, it's probably the best way to find me is on social media.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and I'm sure that will have been really valuable to a lot of people watching.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it's provided some food for thought. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe below and feel free to like or comment. I'd love to know what you think. If you're interested in hearing more about this, please join my Facebook community, From Profession to Passion with Vicky Mittman. I'll see you next time.